It's a fact that we interact with several people in our day-to-day lives, our family members, our colleagues, friends, neighbors. But how often do we objectively assess our relationships with these people? Not whether they are good or bad, but the quality of those relationships. Especially in our youth, we are all curious about the man-woman relationship. Yet, few of us ever think about them at a deeper level beyond the traditional concepts of these relations. In Marathi literature, it was author Gauri Deshpande who for the first time boldly wrote stories that analyze the man-woman relationship at a deeper level. In her novella Karavasatun Patre, or Letters from Prison, she writes, "From a person who is so different that he is almost incomprehensible, what can one really expect? And so, where is the possibility of those expectations to be fulfilled or not? It then becomes necessary to acknowledge that he exists as a complete and independent person, that he is not someone who is a mere addition or a part cut away from one's own self. He is not dependent on one in any way." Is it then the case that only such completely distant persons can have a real relationship with each other? Because the give and take that occupies a major part of human relationships is not present here. On the one hand, this relationship is very insignificant, but on the other, it reaches the core. It is free of irrational and unwanted give and take that is imposed by the society and by the life that one has led until then. Gauri Deshpande's well-known book that thus explores different relationships from a woman's point of view is titled Ekek, Paan, Galawaya, or As Leaves Fall One by One. It is the topic of the 89th episode of Granthyatra today. Gauri Deshpande was born in Pune in the year 1942. She was privileged to have a lineage of great thinkers in her family. Her mother was Iravati Karve, author of the book Yuganta that we discussed in Grantyatra's episode number 74. Dinakar Dhondo Karve was Deshpande's father. Dhondo Keshav Karve, one of the pioneers of women's empowerment in Maharashtra and a noted social reformer, was Deshpande's grandfather. R.D. Karve, who edited the famous periodical Samaj Swasthya in the pre-independence period, was her uncle. Deshpande pursued her education in Pune. She attained a master's and a doctorate in English literature. For some time, she worked in the editorial department of the Illustrated Weekly. Deshpande's creative writing includes various genres such as short story, novel, light essays, translations, poetry, and analytical essays. She began her writing with poetry in English. In 1970, her first short story was published in the reputed periodical Satyakatha. Her book, Ekek, Paan, Galawaya, was published in 1980. This book is a collection of 3 short novels. The first of these is called Letters from the Prison. The very concept of a woman protagonist writing letters to her former boyfriend while she is in a prison was unfamiliar to readers of Marathi literature. But the readers soon realize that this prison is not made of physical walls. As pointed out by critic Dr. Vandana Bokil, it is a prison of traditional concepts. It is a prison of the tendency to always be dependent on someone, a tendency that robs an individual of their freedom. Deshpande writes, "At every mountain that I climbed, there was always someone to extend a helping hand. And until I do not win this battle by myself, I must climb this mountain again and again." Deshpande's protagonist desires to win this confidence of winning every battle of her life on her own strength. She is not devoid of emotions. She does grieve after every breakup with her lover or a friend. But she has come to a realization that such emotional vulnerability is also a kind of prison. Few people ever see those prisons. Even those who see them and are pricked by their presence do not necessarily make a concerted effort to get out of those prisons. In one of the letters, Deshpande's protagonist writes, "In every woman's life, man is something that is a given in some form or the other. I was struggling to get out of that torture, and all of you were a part of that struggle." In another letter, she writes, "Whether it was Dilip, Prayag, or you, the difference was perhaps only in weight, height, skin color, or texture, or age. Now I think I will release myself from you on my own. Only then my insistence for liberation will have a meaning. Otherwise, it would only mean that the jailer has changed while the prison remains." The second short novel in this book is called Madhya Latpatit, or Midlife Struggles. The protagonist of this novel explores the concept of marriage through a close observation and a keen assessment of various married couples. Each of these couples have their own philosophy of married life. While speaking about her sister-in-law, the protagonist has this to say, "With great seriousness, she lectured me that one has to work hard to keep the married life fresh and not let it lapse into a boring routine. That you take no interest in my brother's work is not a good thing. Love gets stronger by sharing a variety of interests and problems." In contrast, a friend of the protagonist is having an extramarital affair with her own secretary. Beyond these cliched situations, the protagonist's search for meaning is more fundamental. She tries to understand the meaning of love and marriage. Her life is successful and happy for all appearances, and yet she feels an unknown fear. She is jealous without any reason and gets sentimental at the drop of a hat. She then leaves her husband in a foreign land where they are staying and returns to India alone. Her search is as much for a meaningful married life as it is to find her own self. At one point, she says, "There should be a revolution that will change all the societal norms. There is something fundamentally wrong in the concept of marriage. Even before one is aware of one's desires and passions, one is committed to fulfill someone else's desires. This then leads to disappointment, dejection, bickering, and heartbreak. Why can't one live with the person of one's choice? Those who wish to get married can go ahead and do so, but why compel others?" But by the end of this novel, the protagonist has realized what she truly wants and is also confident that she has the partner who can give her that. Dr. Pushpalata Rajapure says that the characters in Gauri Deshpande's works are varied. While exploring the life of these characters, the writer also explores the concepts of marriage, family, educational and civil society institutions. She emphatically opposes their prison-like nature. The third short novel in this book is Ekek, Paan, Galawaya, or As Leaves Fall One by One. The protagonist of this novel is a mature woman in her 50s. Her husband of many years, with whom she lived a life of love and friendship, has passed away after a sudden illness. Now, living a solitary life, she is examining all the different relationships in her life. What she had assumed to be pure love for so many years is now revealing its internal dynamics to her mind. At one point, she says, "Even in close intimacy, a person's core remains untouched. Love destroys the object of love. Love needs several supports to remain afloat, and like a fool, I had been trying to find support in love itself." Her married children are estranged from her, yet she examines the mother-son and mother-daughter relationships without entertaining any sort of guilt in her mind. She crosses all socially prescribed parameters of filial love. Describing the difficult relationship between a grown-up daughter and her mother, Deshpande writes, "How difficult is this mother-daughter relationship in a way? Even a mother like Radha, who seemed more like a friend, remains a stranger in many ways. Even when there are so many questions and curiosity in mind, one can never ask some questions. Describing Deshpande's writings, Meghna Bhuskute says that through these stories, Deshpande tried to reject, push, cross, break, and change the social, cultural, and even her own expectations from women. Expectations about fidelity, love, of ways to interact with children and of parenthood. Expectations when dealing with disappointment in one's children, lovers. Expectations about physical love, about dealing with betrayal, about the placid husband-wife relationship, and even about feminism. Deshpande's writings not only gave a new dimension, a new value system, and a new way of thinking to Marathi literature, it also revolutionized the closeted nature that Marathi literature had acquired at the time. Dr. Bokil has said that Deshpande's writings prominently portrays human body and the physical aspect of life. Their description as well as the themes of bodily desires, needs, and their satisfaction. She described physical love in all its details. This led to her being labeled as a bold writer. V.M. Geetali says, instead of looking at a human body as the duality of the body of a woman or of a man, Gauri viewed it as purely as a human body, and thus she began to break the parameters of morality around a woman's body. The other important aspect is that Deshpande's protagonist constantly keeps herself under the lens, examining and assessing her own life. She teaches us to understand what we want and to oppose what we do not. Her writing helps to understand our surroundings that are stuffed with patriarchal thinking. To tell us more about the writer who constantly underlined the equality and friendship in the man-woman relationship, we have with us today Professor Priya Jamkar.
गौरी देशपांडे अशी कथाकार होती की जिच्या कथांना म्हणजे खरं तर तिने उभारलेल्या त्या सगळ्या मोहक कथाविश्वाला, भूलभुलैयाला तुम्ही स्वीकारा अथवा न स्वीकारा, पण तिला तुम्ही टाळू शकत नव्हता. म्हणजे मला हे समीक्षकाच्या भूमिकेतून तिची दखल घेणं वगैरे अशा अर्थाने म्हणायचं नाहीये, पण एक वाचक म्हणून, एक व्यक्ती म्हणून, एक स्त्री म्हणून, एक प्रेमाच्या बाजूने उभी राहणारी म्हणून मला नेहमी ती काय म्हणतीये, ती काय सांगू पाहतीये आपल्याला ते ऐकणं खूप महत्वाचं वाटलं. तिने खरं तर अत्यंत सुंदर अशा लघुकथा लिहिल्यात आणि लघु कादंबऱ्या सुद्धा तिने लिहिल्यात, कादंबरी नाही लिहिली. आणि तिचं स्टोरी टेलिंगचं कसब जे होतं ना ते खूप विलक्षण होतं. एकतर तिच्याकडे सांगायला भरपूर स्टफ होतं आणि दुसरं म्हणजे स्टफ म्हणजे आशयद्रव्य होतं, भरपूर होतं ते तिच्याकडे. आणि दुसरं होतं ते तंत्र म्हणजे रचनेवरची तिची पकड, तिचं प्रभुत्व. म्हणजे आता उगीच आपण कथा लिहायची म्हणून आयुष्याचे असे खरवडत राहायचं, टवके काढायचे आणि तपशील भरायचे आणि कथा फुगवत राहायचं, याची तिला कधीच गरज पडली नाही. तिने सुरुवातीला जो निवडला तो लघुकथा हा फॉर्म निवडला की जो अत्यंत चॅलेंजिंग आहे, आव्हानात्मक आहे. आणि नंतर तिला जे सांगायचे त्याला तो फॉर्म पुरत नव्हता म्हणून तिने लघु कादंबऱ्या निवडल्या. पण जे जे तिला सांगायचंय ते नेमकं घडवायचं कसं, त्याला कथात्म आकार कसा द्यायचा हे तिला खूप चांगलं माहित होतं. म्हणजे ती खूपच चांगली क्राफ्ट्समन होती. दुसरं मला असं वाटतं की तिने आपली सगळी मौखिक कथन परंपरा आहे ना ते खूप चांगल्या तऱ्हेने आत्मसात केली होती. त्यामुळे तिचं सगळं कथात्म साहित्य, विशेषतः तिच्या लघुकथा या खूप बोलक्या आहेत. म्हणजे गोष्ट आणि कथा या दोन्हीची रूपं आपल्याला तिच्या कथात्म साहित्यात बघायला मिळतात. म्हणजे तिने वेगवेगळे प्रकार वापरले. तिने डायरी वापरली, तिने पत्र वापरलं, तिने निवेदनाचे प्रकार वापरले आणि हे सगळं ती अत्यंत कुशल प्रकारे वापरायची. आता कधी कधी असं होतं की हे जे तंत्रावरची जी पकड आहे, जे कौशल्य आहे, त्यातली अनपेक्षितता कधी कधी जाते आणि मग त्यामुळे त्याचा परिणाम उणावतो. म्हणजे जे गौरीचे जे अगदी चाणाक्ष जे वाचक आहेत त्यांना ते लक्षात येतं. आणि पण तो एक वेगळा मुद्दा आहे. मला हे महत्वाचं वाटतं की तिने वेगवेगळ्या रचना पद्धती कथनाच्या कशा वापरल्या ते. आता एक एक पान गळावया ज्या पुस्तकाबद्दल आपलं आता इथे बोलणं चाललेलं आहे, त्याच्यामधलं त्याचंच उदाहरण घ्यायचं तर त्याच्यामध्ये ज्या 3 कादंबऱ्या आहेत त्याच्यामध्ये तिने 3 वेगवेगळे प्रकार वापरलेत. एक पहिल्या याच्यात तिने पत्र वापरलीत की ज्याच्यात आपल्याला पलीकडचा आवाजच ऐकायला येत नाही, हिचाच आवाज आपण ऐकत राहतो आणि तिचं बोलणं आपण वेगात ऐकत राहतो. दुसऱ्या मध्ये मध्यलटपटीत मध्ये तिने प्रथम पुरुषी निवेदक वापरलाय, पण तिने अत्यंत खुबीने सर्वे जणू काही करावा तशा वेगवेगळ्या पात्रांच्या मुलाखती ती रचत जाते. आता हे जे तिने त्याच्यात वापरलंय ना, हे इतकं धोकादायक आहे एका अर्थाने की ते रिपोर्टाजकडे वळू शकतं, पण तसं ते वळलेलं नाहीये. त्यातलं जे कथामूल्य आहे ते तिने खूप चांगल्या तऱ्हेने जपलंय. तिसऱ्या ह्याच्यात एक एक पान गळावयामध्ये तिने तृतीय पुरुषी निवेदक वापरलाय की जो सगळ्यांची बाजू आपल्याला तिथे दाखवतोय, पण थोडंसं बारकाईने जर पाहिलं तर आपल्याला असं लक्षात येतं की तो निवेदक सुद्धा नायिकेच्याच बाजूने आहे. अशी खूप वेगवेगळी उदाहरणं तिच्या ह्याची देता येतील, पण मला आपल्याकडे आता तेवढा वेळ पण नाहीये. पण मला गौरीचं सगळ्यात जर काय आवडत असेल ना तर तो तिच्याजवळ जो उमाळा आहे, जो हळवेपणा आहे, तो मला खूप आवडतो. मला कधीच असं नाही वाटलं की ती फक्त स्त्री पुरुष प्रेमाबद्दल बोलतेय. मला नेहमी असं वाटलं की ती एकूणच प्रेमाबद्दल बोलतेय. ती एकूणच माणसांविषयी जो तिला कळवळ आहे त्याच्याविषयी बोलते. म्हणजे विंचुर्णेचे धडे किंवा तिने तिच्या सासूबाईंवर एक लेख लिहिला होता. तो लेख सुद्धा खूप सुंदर आहे की ज्याच्यामध्ये तिच्या आतला तो जो उमाळा आहे तो आपल्याला सतत जाणवतो आणि मला तो उमाळा खूप महत्वाचा वाटतो, कारण त्याच्यामध्ये असं विस्तृत होण्याची, प्रसरण पावण्याची एक चांगली क्षमता आहे. गौरीने जो आशय मांडला म्हणजे तिच्या कथा कादंबऱ्यातून स्त्रीवाद आहे, व्यक्ती स्वातंत्र्य हे सगळं तर आहेच, पण मला तिने मैत्र ज्या पद्धतीने आणलं, खूप चांगलं कळलं होतं तिला मैत्र. आणि ते काही फक्त स्त्रीमधलंच मैत्र तिला कळलं होतं असं नाही. स्त्रिया स्त्रियांमधलं आहे, पुरुष पुरुष मधलं आहे, स्त्री पुरुषांमधलं आहे, लहान मोठे आहेत, सगळ्यांविषयीच जे मैत्र आहे ते ती खूप चांगल्या तऱ्हेने आणायची. म्हणजे मला वाटतं की मराठी कथा विश्वात जर मैत्र ही गोष्ट जर मूल्य म्हणून जर कोणी रुजवली असेल तर ती गौरीने रुजवली असं मला वाटतं. आता ज्या व्यक्तिवादाच्या वाटेवरून ती जात होती आणि ती वाट अशी होती की त्याच्यावर एक पाऊल टाकलं की दोन्ही बाजूला खोल दऱ्या निर्माण होत जातील. तर त्या दऱ्यांचं नेमकं काय करायचं, त्या दऱ्या पाहायच्या कोणी, त्याचा कोणी विचार कर. इथे मला वाटतं तिच्या त्या संबंध ह्याची एक गोची तयार झालेली होती, पण त्याचा एक कथाकार म्हणून तिने नक्कीच विचार करायला सुरुवात केलेली असणार, कारण मुक्काममध्ये जे वळण तिने घेतलंय ते जर पाहिलं तर आपल्याला माझा हा मुद्दा लक्षात येईल. पण तिच्या अनेक कथांचे शेवट किंवा तिच्या अनेक लघु कादंबऱ्यांची वळणं त्या दरीपाशी येऊन पोचतात असं मला वाटतं. पण असं जरी असलं तरी अत्यंत वेगाने आणि तरीही पेस मेंटेन करत अत्यंत पॅशनेटली ती जे विश्व निर्माण करायची किंवा करत गेली आणि ज्या सुरस पद्धतीने ते सगळं ती आपल्याला सांगत गेली ते अनुभवण्यासाठी तरी गौरी वाचायलाच हवी. मला वाटतं मराठी भाषेचं एक सुंदर रूप सुद्धा तिने आपल्याला दिलेलं आहे. मराठी भाषेचं रूप आहे परत कथा बांधणीचं तिचं कौशल्य आहे आणि बाकी नाती, माणसं, प्रेम यावर ती जे जे काय बोलते ते प्रत्येकाने आपापल्या चवीनुसार घोट घेत राहावं ते.
Critics have said that Deshpande's writings went beyond feminism and encompassed the values of freedom and individualism. Her characters contemplate deeply and encourage the readers to do so. In addition to the unique themes handled in her writing, Deshpande also explored a variety of literary forms. This book itself showcases three different forms of writing: epistolary novel, first person narration, and third person narration. Do read Ekek, Paan, Galawaya by Gauri Deshpande, a book that compels the readers to rethink traditional morality, that unfolds the many different layers related to man-woman relationship, and that explores freedom beyond established norms. Post your reactions on the Granthyatra channel. We shall meet in the next episode of Granthyatra to discuss a collection of short stories that depicts the warmth and stress in human relationships. Until then, keep reading.